Today's program is on customer success, and I'll just kind of read you the outline rather than ramble on. It's no longer an outcome, but a way of life for the most successful companies, and it doesn't stop there. If you really think about consumers, including ourselves, suddenly desire enjoyable experiences as well. More and more businesses are responding and deliberately designing their customer journeys around success and experience. I had the good fortune of, while there was still dust, the dust was settling, I guess Laura Camacho came into my office and we were just chatting about stuff, and I asked her to, kind of work with me a little bit and suddenly curate these topics that we have with the Fridays a little more. And one of the guys she introduced me to, was our speaker today, Ryan Eckenrode. Ryan says we met, probably in passing,
Yeah.
But I had a chance, thanks to Laura, to reconnect with Ryan, who now is the strategic marketing and customer experience lead at Blackbaud. Moved down here from Boston by way of education, attended Carnegie Mellon and then MIT in the areas of business and marketing innovation. A little bit about Ryan. Over the past decade, he's instituted and led innovative, customer-centric best practices, powerful, I thought humanized is a good way to put it, marketing initiatives, communication advancement, process development, analytic-driven guidance, and relationship-focused growth for Fortune 500 companies. It's extremely important to have all efforts, teams, departments, communication, aligned in one detailed customer journey. So he also co-founded his the company he was at last, built around leveraging innovative technology and improving actual one-on-one relationships. It's that success that brought him to Blackbaud, where he's extremely fortunate to now scale up, what he learned, in the smallest startup. He always wondered what people do outside of work, unlike me, just work all the time, So Ryan's got a nonprofit called Blue Eyes that's dedicated to improving the lives of those affected by anxiety, depression, poverty, and addiction. Loves to play golf and go to the beach with his wife and dog, which is probably why he's in Charleston from Boston. So, listen, take it away, Ryan. I appreciate you being here. And today's a significant day. We're going to lose Christina in a little while. She's going to, she's going over to, we got an invite to Google. So this is Google's 10th anniversary celebration. And just by way of perspective, we don't think of, there's not a lot of conversation about Google in the community because it's a data center and all the employees are kind of up there and kind of sequestered. And for somebody who's been over there, I'll tell you, I've been to the White House, and you can get the White House easier than you can get to Google's data center. It's absolutely amazing, the security that they have over there. But for perspective, they've invested 1.5 times what Boeing has invested in infrastructure. So it's billions of dollars, and you don't hear about it, and they're growing extremely aggressively. They're not big on picture taking, just like Boeing, I guess, and all the other things. So, but today's a significant day, and I come because I've got some appointments. Kristen's going to be leaving to represent us up there, and it's pretty nice to have Boeing in our backyard, and we hope have some of the bigger companies now expand as we kind of go down the road. So I have a clicker. You can stand here, or Mike, where do you want Ryan hanging up? So, there you go. I'm going to cut the lights, and we'll roll. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, so just real quick, I'm going to use these slides to help guide us. I get a little awkward otherwise. But I would love to know, first of all, I just want this to be as engaging as possible. Like, my only goal here is to give you guys a strong takeaway when you leave here. So that's the only thing I really care about in terms of this. Show of hands for folks that are here strictly for customer success, anybody that's directly interested in that, like account management, we'll call it. And then the experience side, is that something that interests folks, like what I mean by that when we talk about the experience economy? All right, awesome. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about both. One feeds into the other, obviously. But don't hesitate to raise your hand or speak up throughout the process. Hopefully there are some strong takeaways for everybody. But yeah, my goal is just to really help out and hopefully get more involved with the corridor on a more regular basis. Quick thank you to Ernest. It's been short-lived, but since we knew each other, but feel like we've known each other about 5 years already. Awesome guy. Appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Digital Corridor, as well as Laura, which she had mentioned. She's been a really good friend of mine since I moved down here. When she mentioned Ernest and spoke highly of him, I knew right away that I trusted her judgment, and already I feel like it's a good spot, and definitely would like to get more and more involved over time. Background, I think Ernest did a pretty good job going through this, so I'll blast through this on the side. But basically, what I've done over the years, I started off in sales quickly and got involved with marketing, and then kind of towed the line between marketing and customer success for the last few years. I was in a startup technology scene up in Boston for quite a bit, and just moved here a little bit less than a year ago with my wife, who's also in attendance, but I won't point her out. We have a system where she has a little foam ball, and if someone's not paying attention, she'll point at them and I'll throw it at them and then ask them a question. So there's there. I'll pause a few times too, just so we can talk about a lot of things that I'm trying to connect you with. And again, if there's any questions or anything that you want to dig in a little more, I'm happy to do so today, and then also in the future. My email's on the last slide, and obviously you can get a hold of me through Ernest. So I'm just going to jump in right here. We're living in a different era now. I don't know if you guys kind of realize that. I talked to my mom and my aunt for about 10 minutes, and I quickly realized that a lot of folks are lost and don't quite know like what the heck's going on. They're still trying to catch up with like the fact that email exists, right? And it's been really interesting. When I was growing up, my father was involved in insurance, and he was like the old-fashioned sales guy. And he always did well because he connected with everybody he spoke with, and he was very relationship-driven. So I think his skill set could translate. And the sad part is as we've progressed, this technology automation aspect has almost dumbed down like the relationship tactics and just like the old-fashioned connection with folks. And it's kind of been upsetting. And now, since everybody's starting to talk about artificial intelligence and how you mix the two, and folks are starting to quickly realize, like, okay, if there's another form of technology that does what my current technology does and it's cheaper, I'm just going to leave and go with them because I don't have a relationship. What the heck's keeping me with them? So as that's kind of gone through the system a little bit, people are starting to realize, oh crap, like there's some things that we need to do to help keep our customers, retain our customers, but also interest other folks and not based on price. So now we're getting back into this kick of like, okay, maybe there's something we can do on the innovation side where we can connect with AI, still work through a sales process, develop relationships, and just put together a better experience. And that's where we're at today. And to me, it's really exciting because it's a lot of the work I've been doing for the past 3 or 4 years. And now, since I'm working at Blackbaud, it's a huge project that we're working on there, and I'm really excited about it. Again, just understanding the importance of customer success and a good experience. And when I start talking about experience, I'm not just saying like, okay, customer, are you having a good experience with our company so far? It's anybody that touches your brand, right? So, prospects, people that are looking at your website that might not know much about you, or maybe they're not interested in your product or service, but they know people that do. And as we know, LinkedIn's come a long way because of the network effect. And then you start thinking about your employees, right? With all these great opportunities with Google and these larger companies, you can work from just about anywhere. It's really important that your employees feel attached to your organization so they stay, right? Because they're a valuable resource and they're an expensive resource. And then also partnerships is a huge growth tool for a lot of companies, and it's really important that you're offering a good experience for everybody involved. Otherwise, your culture takes a big hit, and then your progress and revenue take a big hit. So what does this mean for us? So what I did is I try to break it down into 2 categories to help kind of separate a little bit, but there's a lot of crossover. So we'll talk about customer success first, and then I'll dig into the experience economy. There's also, I'll keep referencing different articles and studies, but the one is the experience economy done by Harvard Business School. If you guys have not seen that, reach out to me or just Google it. I'm sure you can find it. It is unbelievable. If you read through that, it's a short read. I think it's like 10 to 15 pages. But it really starts to connect you to what the experience economy is and what it means. And customer success is a huge focal point within the experience economy and the foundation of the architecture. So I'll walk through some of these, and then, like I said, we'll slip in some pauses for questions, but don't hesitate to speak up right away, and then at the end we'll just do a quick review. So we'll start with customer success. And basically, if you make sure that your customers are successful, they'll make sure that you're successful. And customer success, if you ask 10 people what it is, whether they've been involved with it or not, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. And to me, it's really just making the customer successful and continuing to develop that relationship, and then everything else, there's byproducts and all kinds of different tactics to work within that. And I think it's really up to like what market you're in, what you're selling, to kind of dictate how you form that team. And one of the key focal points that I've realized, and this actually came through Salesforce, is the one that really innovated this customer success push, because they realized that they were really doing well on the sales side. They had tons of pipeline, they were closing a lot of deals, but on the back end they were losing a lot of their customers. So they were spending all this money, which is, I'll talk about KPIs towards the end, but cost per acquisition is a big one, right? Because you're spending money to make money, right? And if you're not keeping that money and developing and building it, you're almost losing money at the end of the day. So they quickly realized they were just hemorrhaging revenue on the back end. So they implemented this customer success initiative, which caught wind, and it's more of an innovative look at account management, and it's come a long way. So customer success defined, again, I view it as just making the customer successful and everything that comes along with that. Lincoln Murphy, if you want to check him out or follow him on LinkedIn, he's a genius when it comes to this. Everything he writes, I pay attention to, because he really hits the nail on the head and how important it is for a business to really focus on customer success, but also how to grow it. How do you start the customer success, whether you're a small new company or a large company that's existed for 50 years. There's certain ways that you can go about growing and making this a focal point of your business and enablement. So did you know, a quick point here, companies who prioritize customer success generate 60% higher profits. That right there should make everybody run out and research customer success more and try to figure out how they can implement this a little bit more. And the reason for this is we live in this SaaS subscription economy, right, where we're always having to sell ourselves. Payments have become so granular, pay per user, pay per click, pay per month. So you're constantly selling. So if you don't have that relationship groundwork, then you're not going to do what you typically could, having had the relationship and development on that side. And then if you look at the lifetime value of the customer, that's a huge one. So like, if there's a huge difference between having a customer for 1 year and 5 years, they continue to pay you. You have the opportunity to expand those accounts, cross-sell, upsell. So all of that kind of ties together with that relationship that you develop with them. And then another very overlooked opportunity is referrals. And I'll talk about this when I discuss KPIs, because a lot of folks are really focused on NPS scores, like what's the NPS score, customer happiness, figuring that out. But to me, that's still not very proactive. Are they going to refer you or not, is my question, right? And that should really dictate what the score is for NPS. And NPS stands for Net Promoter Score, for those of you that aren't familiar with it. To be effective long term, again, super important that you've implemented customer success. I put together a little wheel graph over there, and really customer success is the focal point for the structure of your business. So you're thinking marketing and sales, people and operations, revenue, everything connects and goes through customer success. And it can't be some short plan, right? Like, okay, let's improve retention, or let's focus on growing this aspect of the business and throw everything we have into it. It's ever growing, it's ever evolving, and it's something that you need to start off the right way and then continue to enable and grow it the right way. A lot of people ask me, okay, so what does this mean in terms of roadmap, right? Like, what does that journey look like, and how do I structure this? So if I start thinking about a workflow for the customer, how does it typically play out? You can get pretty complex with this, but just to simplify all of it, it's kind of like 4 sections. So starting out with the onboarding phase, right? So think about the post-sale, and if you have a technology, typically you're doing some type of implementation, and the onboarding process is kind of walking them through, getting them used to what they should expect, the technology, the service, And then you dig into the adoption, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of the customer relationship, because during those first few months or weeks or days, if they're not using your product and not trying to fit it into their day-to-day, the engagement's going to be pretty low, and that's going to end up dictating the renewal. Whether they renew or not, they might try to cut you down at the knees on price. So that adoption phase is extremely important. That's why I connected it down to renewal. Expansion is just what that means, right? So a lot of times people want to, they don't trust you quite yet, or it's a technology, especially if it's new, so they want to test the waters. That's why a lot of companies have freemium models to get your feet wet, and then after a week or after a month, they'll start charging you. So that means there's a lot of expansion opportunities. So once you start to earn their trust, there's tons of upsell and cross-sell opportunities to work with them. And again, companies that run customer success, they have this mapped out differently at times. Sometimes they have sales teams that come back in to sell during this process. Not to say I'm against that, but customer success folks do have the relationship and trust, so it's easy to kind of bridge from there. And then the final piece is renewal. And typically, post-adoption is when you start talking about renewal, just to make sure that you're laying the groundwork to see if they're getting the value out of the system. And hopefully by the time that the contract runs up, if you do have a contract, you already know what the answer is if they're going to renew with you, and you're basically acting on more of a strategic behalf for the next year or the next week or the next month. Some quick advice, so just a few quick takeaways on the customer success side. Relationship development is incredible. You'll continue to hear me say that, and I have my dad in the back of my head always saying, it's not just about dinner, ask them about their families and the sports teams that they like, and the vacation they're going to, because that's the thing. Those are the things that they remember. And then guidance and responsiveness equals trust. Trust is such a big thing, especially for startup companies. It's the one thing you don't have yet because no one knows who you are, right? You don't have the brand trust, brand recognition, right? So this is such a key piece. How do you earn trust quickly, be super responsive, and then help guide them? Whenever I hear sales, I don't want to say get turned off by it, but I don't think sales, it's not about hey, I have this, I think you need it, you should buy it. To me, it's just a way of earning their trust and guiding them, right? If you have a product or a service that you think could complement their business or their way of life, guide them, talk to them, educate them. That's why a lot of inbound marketing focuses on writing blogs and really strategic, pieces of writing to help show what the value of something is and connect them and start to get them to think a little bit more about this. To me, that's what sales is, and that's what continued customer success is. And then the third piece that's often overlooked is reciprocity, and it goes an incredibly long way. So the sales, there's a reason why sales folks get a bad name, because it's a take effort. And if there's a way for you to give before you take, it goes an incredibly long way. And so one of the companies I started up in Boston was called Alice, ALYCE, and what we did is we created an algorithm to help the corporate gifting sector. So we noticed a lot of companies were spending a ton of money on just extra large T-shirts with a logo on it, or chocolate, which is great for a diabetic. I have diabetes. Or you're sending a bottle of wine to, the director of finance who quit drinking last year, right? So the gesture was great, but the takeaway sometimes is even negative, and companies were spending so much money on it. So we're okay, maybe there's a way we can connect it with AI, because people share all kinds of information. So we connected it so we could scrape social media and find out what people were interested in. So hey, they like skiing, or hey, they like wine, or whatever. So we connected that to the gifting process, and a lot of sales and demand generation programs at companies started utilizing this to, instead of spending 4 months or 6 months or 3 months calling them and spending a lot of your time connecting with them, spend $50 on a handwritten card and a gift that they would like. Then after that, start to try to connect with them on why you think that you could be a value or a resource for them. So again, just digging in on the reciprocity side, it helps a lot. And it's not just gifting for that, right? It's offering to meet with people or to help them with what they're currently focused on. And then from there, you develop that relationship, you develop that trust, and it's a lot easier to sell to them. So customer success nucleus framework, I basically made this up as I was going through customer success and how important it was to weave it throughout the business. And for me, I came up with nucleus because it's that central aspect of everything that you do. And if you could do that the right way, which also directly connects to your mission, you're in a lot better position as a company. So it's a way to kind of enable companies to get behind this customer success framework, right? And really all this graph is showing you is that when you focus on your customer, you understand your customer, you're focused on like providing a better experience, and it all goes through that kind of central spot, your organization is already in a more innovative position than most companies out there. A lot of questions I get back, okay, that's great, but I brought this up to my boss or our director, and or we're a 3-person company, bandwidth is an issue. That's something that always comes up, right? Like bandwidth, we don't have the head count, and I'll talk about that a little bit further down the road here. But here's some feedback that Stephen McDonald at SuperOffice, and again, SuperOffice is another one of those companies that has a lot of good content out there to read, so I suggest following him. He's one of the marketing managers there. But functional silos, something that I often hear at most companies that I work with, meaning my customers. I worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies on revamping their marketing innovation programs, their sales programs, and their customer success programs. And silos is a big one. So people come in, whether a team or an individual contributor, their heads down working on their stuff, right? And they have no idea what's going on around them. And that's not efficient, because a lot of times there's other projects that could help their project out or their work. And this is one of the big reasons why customer centrism kind of falls to the wayside. Another one is culture is not aligned to the customer needs. So you might have a CEO or someone on the executive leadership team that's like head over heels with sales, net new sales, law of numbers. Let's just bump up that pipeline. We'll close a lot of deals, and as long as we're doing that, we'll be fine. And then we have folks that are more the techie type, right, that come up with the product, grow into the CEO role, but don't truly understand business development, relationship tactics, and things like that. So culture stems down typically from the mission, from the executive leadership group, the board, whatever you may. So it's important to get folks that have that customer success mindset up at top to help kind of develop that culture. Missing key technology. This is another huge one, right? There's lots of cheap systems out there, to be honest. There's also a lot of expensive ones. But there's some tools that you can use, especially through social media, to help you with this customer-centric approach. And then support not to equip to manage customer issues. Again, bandwidth, right? So if you have a new product, you hit the ground running, which is great. A lot of times you'll have some bugs, or you're always going to have bugs, right? But there's going to be some issues, service issues, and if you don't have the headcount to handle that, that can put your business behind the 8 ball. And a lot of times, quality startups that end up failing, they don't die because of starvation. They die because of indigestion, right? And that's a lot of stuff that you have to focus on. It's not just about step one. It's like playing pool, right? I play with my wife, and she gets real annoyed. She's so focused on making that corner pocket, right? Meanwhile, I'm thinking about the next shot, and you're setting yourself up for the next shot. That's how you should look at customer success and what you're doing in terms of customer service and where your product's at. Don't release it too early, things like that. And then insufficient expertise in data analytics. This is a huge one, and I'm going to talk about data because everybody talks about big data. Hey, are you collecting data? I've actually seen companies that have stickers that they put on their computer. Data is fun, big data, but I know based on a lot of folks that I've talked to that they are not liberating that data at all. It's basically just water or air that they have that they're not utilizing, right? So it's not about big data, it's about liberating that data and using it in a proactive manner. And then the last piece is this an organization focused on sales before the customer. So again, this happens a lot, right? Sales. We're going to hire 50 sales reps and 3 customer success reps. And it always irritated me because there's so much effort that has to be put on the back end to keep that customer, grow the lifetime value of that customer, and it almost should be a 1-to-1 ratio. So a lot of companies are still struggling with that. So I'm going to pause there. Does anybody have any questions on anything that I was just talking about?
You were talking about NPS scores. If I were to pitch an idea that we need more customer service or customer success managers in the field, what would you use as a measuring tool or a KPI to make that argument, other than not losing customers?
I'm so glad you asked this question. So it's really, really simple, and I, if I haven't come across someone that thinks differently, I don't know, but the two things that people care about the most is money and passion. If you can connect to one of those things, so I would definitely develop a business case and say, okay, these are the surveys, and then get kind of unique with the surveys and things like that. So ask questions. I think candid feedback is typically the best. So having your account managers, your customer success managers bring this up during conversations, because you'll start to generate the quantitative feedback, but also the qualitative feedback, and then you can develop a business case around that. So I don't know if you have anybody like an analytics team or anybody that's good with just numbers essentially, but you can start to figure out like how much like a percentage churned, right, equals in terms of revenue. And then also you can always go back to the mission statement, and typically it flows around the success of the business, which means it flows around the success of the customer. So I would do that. I would develop a business case, and there's a lot of companies that help, and I was just talking to one about augmenting, that approach. So there's different ways to, not just like the NPA survey, but there's also like health score tactics, relationship tactics that you can start to develop around that to develop that a little bit better.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ryan, can you just talk a little bit about how culture and customer success are like? What does that look like? When a culture really supports customer success.
Yeah, so I think this is why I'm gonna bring up the mission cascade a little bit later. But for me, like I'll just even connect it to Blackbaud, right? Like we're trying to help spread good at Blackbaud, right? So it's all about helping the folks that need help in these organizations. And to me, like you can't do that unless your customers are successful. And if you understand that, you develop like your teams and your enablement programs and the way you talk, your tone with your internal communication as well as your external communication, that's when you start to develop a culture that's a good one, that's focused on like that mission around making your customers successful. So I think, following that mission cascade typically will allow you to do that, assuming that the company's mission's a quality one. And trust me, I think they spend like years on developing the mission statement sometimes. So
Right.
yeah, that's a good way to do it. Also, I think letting your employees be authentic and not just saying like, hey, I have an open door policy, but like be who you are. We hired you for a reason, and trust them a little bit more. And talk to them and connect with them. I think that really helps, especially for managers that are trying to build their team and get them motivated. I think that's a great way of starting to develop a good culture and tying that to customer success. Allowing them to be authentic and candid in their approach is good. LinkedIn actually is doing a pretty cool program too, because like whether we want to realize it or not, your professional life and your personal life are very closely tied. And we can pretend they're not, but they are, and I'll talk about that as well. And one of the big things is like, am I getting paid the right amount? Am I valued? Those are questions that every employee typically has if they have a boss. And LinkedIn's instituted a program where they basically show you like what you could make elsewhere, because they noticed that companies were leaving for Facebook and Google and these other companies, but then they were coming back. And what they realized is like, there's a million different reasons why people choose to work where they do. And a lot of it's the manager, it's the money, it's the location. So they started sharing these insights proactively, which most companies hid, and just said, hey, you might make $3,000 here, $3,000 more here. And if you want to talk about boosting your pay, we can talk about that. But also, looking at Glassdoor and these other programs, they're having problems with their culture, and there's more employees leaving than there are coming. So there's a lot of things that you can point out, and companies are just looking to be a little bit more honest in that approach. Yeah.
Does customer success look the same for every customer? Meaning that we're in a business to consumer play, where a lot of people are in a business to business play. So for us, a lot of times our customers, again, people do business with people. So when our representatives go out, they need to build that relationship. But oftentimes people just want something done, they want it done quickly, they want to go about their day. So we'll use certain applications for scheduling that kind of takes away that personal touch. So I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way for us to make sure that we're giving the customer success that they're looking for that may be different from somebody else.
Yeah, so I think that's a good question, and I'll go back to this because the answer to your question is no. Like it's kind of like someone's music list or playlist, right? You're never going to find You're gonna look at mine and you're gonna see Backstreet Boys on there, whether I want to admit it or not, right? There's different. You look at one of my buddies, their playlist is different, but the things that they care about are typically similar, right? So you almost have to treat it like that. I think like the framework is the same because like you have to initially introduce yourself, get to know the folks, make sure that they understand how the project's going to go, things like that. So those are pretty typical, and usually, you have a time that you're agreeing to, like a timeline, right? So those are like the consistent things there. But otherwise, no. And I think this is why the relationship with sales and customer success is so important, kind of bridging the gap between responsibilities, because the sales team should be the ones setting the expectations. They're the ones that are making the promises to get the folks to buy. That needs to become the driving force in what the customer success team or the account manager or the project manager does. We promised you this. Not only are we going to do that, we're going to pass that up, and we're going to make sure that you're giving us the thumbs up and you're introducing us to everybody that you know. That's what it comes down to. Cool. All right, I'm going to move forward here. So starting to tie into another bucket here is internal alignment, and over really the past 2 or 3 years, I've worked with companies that have been, I'd say, 500 employees and up, and this is something that I constantly saw. And then when I started paying attention to my own startup organizations, it was kind of similar too. So it was like a similar pain point for every organization I was walking into. And a lot of times they were like, okay, like we have a retention problem, or we have a sales problem, or our marketing team's on completely different pages than the product teams and things like that. And oftentimes this internal alignment came up, and it's so important to make sure, and this is why you always hear people talking about transparency and understanding what other projects are going on. It's super imperative that you're making sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's going in the right direction, because that's where you become really efficient and profitable. So digging into some of the pieces of internal alignment, it really helps motivate your employees. It impacts the business outcomes, which is pretty obvious, and then the goal achievement leads to long-term employee satisfaction. So something else I'll continue to push on is making sure that your employees are happy and proud of what they're doing as well. The crazy part is 70% of employees say alignment is the greatest hurdle to achieving company strategy. Again, this is consistent, like across the board. 70%. This is a huge survey done by BetterWorks, and BetterWorks is really innovative in terms of the HR and OKR and metric framework for employee enablement and different initiatives with your employees. But to me, that was wild, because it's kind of an easy thing to do if you think about it, right? It's pretty black and white. Okay, like, do you understand what we're doing? Okay, no, let's fix that. Are there other folks that are questioning some of this stuff too? Another thing is people make assumptions, right? So if they don't understand something, and maybe they're more introverted than others, they tend to sit back and just make an assumption, and they might go 6 months with the wrong assumption, right? And that's something that you have to tackle pretty quickly. So then it goes into the question like, okay, well, why are we not aligned? Is this executive leadership? Is this dealing with the employees? And the answer is both, right? I mean, it technically starts with leadership, but employees are the ones that can kind of push and speak up and work to become more collaborative and prove that that's more effective. So I would say it starts with executive leadership, then it evolves and is pronounced with management. So you think mid-level management, team leads, things like that, and then it's sustainable by employees that are willing to avoid these silos that a lot of times they fall into with this. And just a kind of quick graphic here, again, starting with like the mission and the vision, like why your company's doing what they are, right? Like what are they trying to accomplish? And then going through like the goals, like this could be corporate goals, leadership goals, whatever, and then you have subsets of that for your little teams or your individual contributors that align with this vision and where you're going. Then backing that up with the metrics that help kind of measure where you're at and consistently looking at the data, because that is like the direction things are headed. So you can be proactive because of that. So teams, projects, your customer success, meaning like the actual success of your customers, and then ultimately you accomplishing your mission or getting close to your mission. Communication and roadmap synergy. This is another big one. A lot of people are talking about like journey development, roadmap development. What does the sales process or workflow look like? What's the implementation strategy? What is the project strategy? And then how do we map that out? And sometimes companies even create like these Gantt charts, right? There's all kinds of things that you can do. And then also companies are talking about communication. And communication, I know Laura, you would probably laugh at this. People come up to me, okay, this deals with communication at Blackbaud. How do we do this? Or let's figure this out. And can you own this, right? Communication is like air or water, right? Like, it's always around us, and it's like a key foundational aspect to any relationship. And you can ask my wife as well. I mean, if she has no idea what I'm doing in the backyard when I'm digging this huge hole, I'm going to get in trouble, right? So connecting the two is super important. So understanding internally where you're at in the roadmap, communicating that to the organization, your product team, your service team, your marketing team, right? And then also externally making sure the customer or the prospect or the partner understands like where they're at in the cycle or the funnel or whatever you guys are calling it, right? And they know what to expect. So I mapped this out. So it really starts with the awareness stage. So a lot of companies think about marketing, inbound marketing, any type of digital marketing, conversational marketing, social media marketing. There's tons of stuff out there. So like that initial touch point, getting them in this funnel and then working them through the different stages all the way through trying to retain the customer. And one of the first things you can do is connect them to the tools or the mediums for communication. So you start thinking about marketing automation systems, emails, phone calls, in-person meetings, direct mail, events, social, gifting. I put stars around direct mail and gifting because that's a way of standing out, right? Everybody's in this like hyper guerrilla marketing mode and like, okay, we have an email automation system, we're paying a lot of money for it, let's touch as many people as we can, and if we get 1 to 2 or 3 people to respond, like that's great, but you're also overlooking the fact that you're pissing everybody off and you're ruining your network effect by doing that too. And another thing too is like, I don't know what you guys, but my inbox gets pretty crazy, and there's some of us that have that 0 inbox, and there's some of us that have that 3,000 inbox, right? And for me at work, oftentimes I have an inbox of 250 unread emails, and it drives me nuts because I want to be at 0. I just don't have the time. So now I'm really looking at the subject line, I'm really looking at the first sentence, and if it's an ask right away or if it's something awkward, I throw it out, right? So there's different ways to do things that help you, and direct mail is a big piece that is starting to come back in the thick of things. Gifting, right, being a little bit more creative on social, so there's all kinds of different tactics. But again, making sure that you're aligning this, so when you start thinking about, okay, it's one thing to do this, but can I measure this? And the answer is yes. Not only can you measure it, you can tie to different stages, and when you look at your data, you can help kind of improve the areas or the conversations or the tone that you're using during that time. Communication alignment. So again, you guys know what internal communication is, you know what external communication is. Those are obvious. Those are definitely things that you need to focus on. This can't be good without this. So I would usually suggest aligning your teams and your projects and making sure internal communication is good. One of the most overlooked phases, though, is that transitional phase. So depending on what your customers look like and your roadmaps, there's a lot of handoffs, right? Whether it's from technology to sales or sales to technology, sales to account management, partnership to sales to account management, finance, like, hey, chase them down like they're not paying their invoice. There's a lot of things that are going on, and you need to make sure that you know exactly who is responsible for what internally during these transitional phases, and you need to make sure that you're allowing the customer to understand who is responsible, who's supporting them, and who's guiding them. That's super overlooked, and it's really, really important. So now we're going to start digging into the data side, and we can totally geek out on this. Data, again, is a super powerful tool, and we have great technology out there. There's different frameworks, there's different like lean mechanisms that you can use. There's all kinds of cool stuff that you can do with the central focus around customer success and KPIs to help you stay proactive. So I pulled 2 superheroes. Technically, I think I made her up. This was from a South Park episode, which I thought was hilarious. So I don't know if any of you guys saw this. But when it comes to data, which superhero is representing you guys, right? So we have Captain Hindsight, who's taken the world by storm, telling people what they should have or could have done to prevent their errors. His trusty sidekicks are coulda, shoulda, and woulda. His arch nemesis is Proactive Pam. So that's Captain Hindsight. Then we have Proactive Pam, who we're super proud of. She's an expert at paying attention to important data trends and quickly acting to help improve her efforts. She is fully aligned with company goals and a path to success. Her arch nemesis is Captain Hindsight. So, a show of hands, who thinks they're a little bit more, and if you're embarrassed and you don't want to do it, I totally understand. Who thinks you have a little bit more of Captain Hindsight than Proactive Pan at your company? Okay, well that's good. Then Proactive Pam is someone that I think we can all strive to have and incorporate in what we're doing. And to me, this is about liberating data, right? Collecting the right data, taking that data and using it proactively. Now, if you think about it, by definition, you have to be a little bit reactive with the data, but once you start seeing certain trends and you analyze that, you can quickly jump in and make adjustments. Not quite a full pivot, but make adjustments to where you need at the business. And if you're able to go back to this part here and you're kind of structuring everything this way, you can get really, really granular with some of the problem areas, the pain points, or things that are going really well that you can maybe replicate. So I always get this question, all right, well, what metrics are you keeping track of, or what KPIs? So I made a list, and I'll provide this slide share so you guys have this afterwards as well. So these ones are the ones I kind of pointed at that were the most important to me over probably the last 10 years. Bookings and revenue is pretty basic, right? As well as pipeline, but also measuring net new and expansion opportunities. Just getting a good gist of like, okay, are we being effective in our content strategy, our website, our cold calling, whatever. A huge one is cost per acquisition, because especially when you're a young company, you'll do whatever it takes to land a client. And what you don't realize is that, well, maybe what you do realize is that you're spending a lot of time and energy and effort, which is money. And it might take you 6 months when the sales cycle probably should be 6 weeks. And once you bring them on and they ask for a discount, which you're obviously going to give them because you don't have much revenue, you're going to end up losing money by bringing on a customer. So it's something that you always need to pay attention to. Like, how can we become more efficient with our process of acquiring a customer? And maybe it's not emailing them 10 times. Right? I've had like 30 phone calls from a mortgage company. I don't know where they got my number or my name, but they are absolutely harassing me. And I'm just thinking, like, I'm not going to answer you. If I do, I'm going to be extremely rude, and you're wasting your time and money. But if they were to send me a handwritten card like, hey, we're one of those annoying companies, but we noticed that we could do this for you, and I wanted to give you tickets to the Pittsburgh Steelers game, and we hoped you would talk to us. Yeah, I'm going to call them back, right? And you could call that a quid pro quo. You could call that leading them on, whatever. But chances are, typically, these folks do have something in hand that you can benefit. But if I don't trust them and they're not being creative around it, I'm not going to pay attention to them. So that $50 gift might go a long way when it comes to the customer acquisition. So moving on, customer lifetime value is a huge one, right? Because that means you're retaining your customers, they're happy, they continue to spend, they might start spending more. So that's a big piece, and you can also connect that to referral and advocacy efforts for your company as well. And the rest is pretty normal. Like, our customers engaging with you guys? How are the renewals? NPS, I cross out NPS because I'm a little bit weary, because it's really important on asking the right questions, and the timing has to be good with that. So I often, if you are running NPS surveys and you're really using that for health score and where things are at, I would suggest augmenting that as much as you possibly can, because you just want to make sure that's accurate. Because a lot of times people are just like, oh yeah, it's good, I'd refer you, and then when at the end of the year, your CFO is looking, we've had 0 referrals, but we have 90 customers that have like ridiculous NPS scores. Well, that's not really accurate data, right? Customer service trends, that's a big one. One of the first things my dad told me to do when I was involved in the insurance business a long time ago was sit with the claims department, so you can actually see what's happening. Like, a lot of times product folks or product experience, customer success managers, account managers, if you just sit with the folks that are taking on a lot of those customer service issues, you can pick up on trends and say, okay, maybe we can adjust the product or what we're doing with our roadmap to help kind of cut that down and make that experience a better one. And then the last few words, kind of employee turnover and satisfaction, just to make that better, make sure they're happy. And then heading over to qualitative, there's just a few things you can do. It's like around collaboration, enablement programs, message and tone and personalization. That's a big one, because I read too many emails that just are fake. I know they're fake, and they don't make much sense to me. And I know they're just kind of like going through and checking the boxes. So if you can connect with me and have a better tone, that's really important. So starting to measure that. New hire onboarding, employee happiness, customer advocacy is a big one too. That's taking care of like your top customers and then working with them and giving them things typically other customers aren't getting, and then also making sure that you're generating referrals and trust case studies, things like that from them. Really, really important. So I'll stop there. And any questions in terms of the stuff that we just reviewed over the past few slides?
You talked about getting candid NPS scores. Do you have a method that you can recommend? Because I know if I ask my customer how I'm doing, they're going to be like, "You're awesome."
Yeah.
But I would like more raw information. I want something realistic.
Yeah, typically I don't have like an easy answer for that because it really depends on what you're providing, what your customer relationships are, what the contract length is, how often you're speaking to them. Like there's so many different variables that are involved with that. But I would typically, if you're going to run a survey, run 2 surveys that are like completely different, right? A lot of folks are starting to include stuff in their emails, like their signature or post-project, things like that, where it's kind of like real-time feedback. They can click on something, right? You can do that. I typically like when my customer success managers fit that into some random conversations, and it's not very direct. It's almost like having a hidden agenda of like, what do you think so far? Like, you and I are working closely together, kind of getting that stuff back, and then fitting that in. They can, depending on what you guys are using for your CRM or customer management tool or even a project management tool, you can start to collect some of that feedback on a regular basis, and that's pretty candid. So that will give you qualitative initially, but then you'll start to be able to pick up some trends. So there's different tactics you can do. And honestly, if you just Google NPS, and again, there's organizations involved here too that are doing some pretty innovative stuff to talk to about that, because it's something that's on the top of everybody's mind right now as they're trying to earn more trust and get some feedback on that.
We do them now, but I'm thinking if maybe the sales staff asks instead of me.
Yeah.
Then it might.
For sure. I would do, as long as it's not awkward, I would do it as frequently as possible at different points of the journey or the funnel, right? Because it's going to give you the feedback loop that you need for that part of the business. And the sales team could do it, but then another thing too we did in my last company is I had the product, like head of product do it, and I had him and self-described. He's a total geek, really nice guy, like super introverted, but we put his name, because a lot of companies too like would put like customer success team or this is the group. Not that I'm against that, but people like that one-to-one connection, whether it's actually a team emailing them or not. Like there's a way for you to make the email personalized and have it come from Tina Smith or whatever. And there's ways to kind of generate from that. But from him being on the product side and just kind of reading through his email where he was referencing Star Wars and other stuff, it's cool. But you as the recipient, you knew he's directly tied to the product that you're having problems with, right? You're like, hey, we're just looking to improve what we're doing. We got a lot more candid feedback than when we had a salesperson like, do you like me or not? So.
Yeah, I just want to say one question to ask.
Yeah.
Which to avoid that, everything's great. It's just say, could you please tell us one thing we can do to make it better for you? And
That's a great one. Yeah, that's really good. Definitely, and my wife, she's involved with the AI and research team for a company called Change Healthcare, and they're looking at all kinds of different ways to get that candid feedback. So she definitely has some ideas. If you guys want to email me, I can definitely share some more information on that as well.
How often are you guys going on social media to see what the really candid feedback is when you're talking to other people?
Every 5 minutes, probably. Now we at Blackbot, we have we're a big company, so we have like a whole group dedicated to that. But there's tools, like Hootsuite and other programs that have both like a way to kind of effectively manage your social media strategy, but also there's like analytics you can do. There's also keywords and things that you can do through Google Analytics. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do, but constantly, because to your point, it's super candid. Now, you have to be careful too, because we see this a lot with iPhone and headphones. Like the more popular your product is too, it's like easy for people to complain, and the more vocal folks are typically the people that are worked up and not excited. So again, having different mediums and different tools and tactics around that, they kind of help balance and find that central piece is important. But definitely, I would pay attention to it quite a bit.
Why, with the commoditization of a lot of products and services, that race to zero, is there some data that shows the margin that's gotten after the sale, if you will, after the PO as opposed to upfront, more on the customer success side?
I missed the first part of that. Could you repeat the question?
How, is there data available that shows how much of the margin is available through that customer
Oh,
success
yeah.
cycle as opposed to upfront, getting the PO?
Heck yeah. I mean, my last company was a perfect example of this. Like our sales team, we were just trying to get our foot in the door. Again, we had no brand recognition, whatever, but we'd sell a deal knowing that this company should be paying us between 100 and 150 grand a year for a SaaS fee, but we were closing on a 20K contract. But we knew that because if we took care of them, we proved out, through the data and experience and provided them with a really good experience that, 6 months, 3 months down the road, they could be using a few other tools or using it a little bit more. So we had, we started off, we had a hunch, but then we quickly had the data to prove that out, where our customer success team was 3 times as profitable as our net new sales team. But there's plenty of studies around that, and it really digs in. Lincoln Murphy, again, go check him out. There's a lot of companies that are thinking about this in a really cool way. There's another company called Price Intelligently up in Boston, and their CEO was on our board, and he's just a maniac when it comes to pricing models and how to price yourself the right way and generate that feedback loop and continue to evolve that. I would definitely check him out too, because again, this is you can get very strategic with that, and behavioral science becomes a huge piece of this too. Like, get your foot in the door. To them, it's not the foot; you're opening the door. Or start opening the windows in the house and climbing through. There's different tactics that you can use to grow that customer. All right, great. So I'm gonna go through. I think we got how much time? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay. So I'll quickly go through the experience side and a little bit on the behavioral science, and then you guys can follow up with me. This is huge. I don't know if Disney's come out with a lot of books around this, different stories, but folks are really starting to focus on this. Customer experience, CX, things like that have been around for a while, because it's like, okay, are you enjoying the design of our app and things like that? But it's way more about different things in terms of the experience. So a study by Harris Group found that 72% of millennials would rather open their wallets based on experiences rather than on material items. Whenever I hear millennial, it's usually someone making fun of a millennial. I'm a millennial, and I appreciate being made fun of for certain ways that I have. But I also know that a lot of my friends are in powerful positions at companies now, where they have control of budgets and direction and strategy, and that's what they care about. This is what I care about. A lot of folks, if you talk to 9 out of 10 millennials, they'll say the experience matters and what they're doing, right? So it's definitely something you have to pay attention to. Quickly, I want to read through this. This is from that Harvard Business Review I talked about. So to appreciate the difference between services and experiences, recall the episode of the old television show Taxi, in which Iggy, a usually atrocious but fun-loving cab driver, decided to become the best taxi driver in the world. He served sandwiches and drinks, conducted tours of the city, and even sang Frank Sinatra. By engaging passengers in a way that turned an ordinary cab ride into a memorable event, Iggy created something else entirely, a distinct economic offering. The experience of riding in his cab was more valuable to his customers than the service of being transported by the cab. And his customers happily responded by giving bigger tips. By asking to go around the block again, one patron even paid more for poor service just to prolong his enjoyment. The service Iggy provided, taxi transportation, was simply the stage for the experience that he was really selling. To me, when I read that, I was like, yes, like that is a perfect example of having the complementary pieces to put together a better experience. So a takeaway for marketers and CS leaders quickly, there are many things that you can do. Marketers can take away from this discussion, the experience economy, but one stands out. If you want to build brand affinity, give the people what they want. And the experience, pay attention, creating that feedback loop in the surveys that you create, the conversations that you're having. Make sure you're paying attention and start to develop a better experience around everything that you do. Also, did you know a bad customer experience will have a reach twice as far as a good experience, and it will take 12 positive experiences to make up for that bad one. I love this. I saw this picture on LinkedIn once, and it's perfect. So I can't tell you how many companies are like, oh, we have a problem. Like, we need to hire 10 more people. We have pipeline issues. Let's hire 15 more sales reps. Or maybe just create like an inbound marketing strategy and just tell different stories or start blogging or things like so many different things you can do, and just throwing resources at a problem doesn't fix it, right? You can have a million ladders when really all you need is one or two if you're doing it the right way. Mission-led cascade. So again, this is super important, letting your mission and goals lead everything that you're developing, from projects, departments, collaboration, updates, MBRs, QBRs, monthly reviews, things like that. Starting to pull it together. So by now you should be seeing quite a bit of crossover between customer success, or customer focus, alignment, communication. If you cascade all the strategies down from the mission, you'll be off to a great start. So think about your alignment of image, alignment of values, alignment of operations. I want to talk about behavioral science real quick because this is super important. This is definitely something you guys should Google and research a little bit more because there's a reason why people buy and leave and pass on things. And typically it's not the product or service, it's the salesperson that they think's annoying and they don't want to pay attention to them. So if it's an extrovert trying to talk to an introvert, maybe you can respect that and like talk to them about things or do a little bit more research than you typically would to connect with them. Like start to develop a relationship and don't overwhelm somebody. That's all ties into behavioral science and why people are doing different things. We actually had someone that spoke at SKO at our sales kickoff for Blackbaud did this, and I thought it was really creative. To speak to the power of behavioral science, she was saying that put yourself on top of like a beautiful mountain, and you're sitting in a really comfortable chair, and you're drinking your favorite drink, whether that's tea or an alcoholic beverage, and you're just relaxing. You're kind of like, once I heard this, I was like, whew, yeah, it feels good. And she goes, take that same situation, but then put yourself on a rocking chair, and it's a 5x5 with no fence, and you look down, and you can see like at the bottom of the mountain, and it kind of takes you back real quick. And like, oh, like that's not comfortable at all. And this is a completely fictional circumstance. Like this isn't happening, but in my head, I started sweating a little bit. I went from being like at ease to like, okay, now I have a little bit of anxiety. That just shows you how powerful your mind is. So behavioral science is such an important piece to everything that you do. Any piece of content, anything you write, anything you say, whether you're at a restaurant, you're at work, you're at a meeting, or you're on a video, just think about that stuff because it's really, really important. And remember these pieces. You're always selling, you're always developing relationships, you're always trying to earn trust, and not everyone is like you and may react differently to similar circumstances. So respect that. And then the last piece is just finish here. Remember to have fun. And again, I mentioned my wife a few times. Like I've gone through situations that were pretty stressful, and I wasn't happy. And now I'm extremely happy in my profession, and my profession directly ties to my happiness in my personal life. Whether you want to ignore that or respect that, it's true. So do what you love, and if your passion connects with like what the mission of the company is, what you're providing, you can fit your authentic self into what you do, and you're better for it, and the company's better for it. This is super important. People have always talked about that, but I don't feel like enough people live this, right? And quality of life is something I'm currently trying to work on, and my professional life plays a big impact in that. That's it.
For some reason I feel like Ryan raced through that stuff. I need more.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a good.
Yeah.
It's a great topic. Well, I appreciate terrific presentation, and we have, for some of you guys who might have heard, we've talked about doing a day-long session, and now that we've moved over here, we're here in 2 years until we go to the new building, and we're looking at everything that we do. And this is definitely something I want to do twice a year, all day, intense. So when he's talking about go to this website and go to this resource list that can be provided to folks so they can go and kind of learn up. We're getting ready to hire a community engagement manager, so this is top of mind, all of this, because I'm going to convey all this information about our organization to a new person. And this is a top of mind kind of issue all the time, so I certainly appreciate it. And Ryan's got his information. You'll know that this is online. So if you need to contact him, and maybe since he gets so many emails, put Fridays at the court at the top. So
Yeah.
so he'll actually reply.
Interesting enough, this is my address for my nonprofit company, and that volume's super low. No one wants to give us money. No one wants to do anything. So I'll read that right away.
So thanks again for presenting.
Yeah, no problem.
So
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you all for coming out today. And
yeah, thank you.